Let me just present. AFKC is a consulting company based out of Italy. The headquarter is Italian, and we work as a consulting for cybersecurity all over Europe, and we collaborate a lot with InnoEnergy. In fact, we will be also present together at the venue in Brussels on the 28th. I would like to start where my colleague left, but asking you, first of all, it's late afternoon, so let's start with a quick question. Do you know what is this? I'll tell you a secret, it's a toaster. But it's not just a toaster. It has been used together with other different kind of IoT devices to launch one of the most infamous attacks, the Mirai attack, which is one of the biggest ever seen. And by the way, we're talking about DDoS in this case. It involved toasters, light bulbs, cameras, baby monitors, but also home routers. They were all used to launch attacks against Bitcoin companies to try to mine Bitcoins and steal, obviously, steal money. Those are all the different appliances involved. I see two things here that are they require very careful attention. The first one, routers. 67%, so the 50 plus the 17, they were using either Telnet or FTP for communication. They're both sending information, including passwords, in clear text. This is an issue because anyone which is sniffing this kind of communication can have your password and can break in. And the most interesting, going back to the toasters, is the bottom line, unknown devices. Here is where toasters, cameras, they fall in. And with unknown ports, unknown protocols, this is why it was really disruptive. So this is something that we have as an IoT, SCADA stuff inside our houses, and we should take care about it. Another very quick example. You don't know what this is, I tell you. This is an equipment, it's big like this, no more. 50 euros, you can buy it, also on the internet. You have to do something, but very quickly. And this one can just sniff all the wireless LAN that are around and can easily reset your communication and steal your own password. You just need to decrypt it, and you have the password. I have used it for 1 week, and it recovered a kind of 400 different passwords on 400 different wireless network, which were actually, as you see, encrypted in VPA. They were completely encrypted, but you can easily decrypt. And it's 50 euros. So even if it's not a toaster, we can still do something into the, the smart cities or the smart houses or whatever. So what we can do about it? Those are some of the most common issues for the smart cities. And let me tell you, they are the same that you find also in IT, traditional IT security rather than OT security. Cryptography, poor encryption, non-existent security device services, and poor understanding of social engineering. It's more easy, accordingly to, for example, Kevin Mitnick, to ask someone, give me your password, than try to break in with all your technology and probably crack the password. Everybody's willing to give it to you. I can give you tons of examples of real life. And lack of protection versus denial of service attacks. We should be prepared for this. Which is the first step? Think about your risk. How can you think about your risk? The first is calculating the risk, but with a different angle. Normally, you calculate it like this, is the likelihood multiplied for the impact, and the likelihood is the vulnerability multiplied for the threat. But now let's think with the eyes of the bad guys. Do they have the capability? Do they have the opportunity? And do they have the intent to actually break in your house, your smart cities, your smart equipment, or your toaster, this is a good way to start rethinking about how to calculate the risks that you're actually facing. This should be done on all the layers of the layers and the tires of the IoT, which are mapped to the cyber threats. There are standards around that already state for each of the tire which are the most common vulnerabilities, the most common threats that you may find, and they can give also at least some recommendation on how to prevent them. Naturally, you should go deeper, but standards and assessments, they help a lot about it. So we should think about security by default or security by design. This is probably the best example I can find. This is a town. It's actually in Italy, but doesn't matter. It's a town on the seaside, and it's, as I said, the best example of security by design. You see the buildings are right bone to each other. The enemies can only come from the sea, and if they want to own the rock, they don't have any road, any route from the sea up to the hill, because the buildings are preventing this. This is the best example that I could find about the meaning of security by design or security by default, as you prefer. This is stated in cyber resilience policy as well. And talking about cyber resilience, as we are always behind, these are the 4 goals of cyber resilience policy or standard. The first one is really key: anticipate. The problem is, if I have a vulnerability, someone already exploited it, or someone is going to exploit it. If I have a way to understand upfront what will happen, if I can see the future, someone is using this attack in another country, so I can expect that in 1 week it will come to my house as well. Then I can start thinking about how to protect myself, withstand. Those are different principles, like the normal IT or IT security process that you are used in business continuity, for example, plan, do, check, act. If we plan and if we do, we are already late. If we can anticipate, we can do something. And this is the best way. Leverage threat intelligence. Understand the threat, understand how the bad guys, did you remember the slide before, how to calculate the risk. So if we know how the guy will be working on us, then we can do something. And for this, we need cyber intelligence. This is a fairly example. I just pictured here a 1-year span of events taken from threat intelligence about smart cities in general. Threat alerts, whatever. On top you have the legend there. What really scares me are the most 2 important one. The green, which is paste this. So someone has pasted some document somewhere. It can be your code on GitHub, so legal. It can be an exploit. It can be something that you want to monitor. But much more, the bottom one here, I don't know, this color is bluish something, is dark web pages. Now I can understand I can paste some code on Pastebin because I want to have it, or on my GitHub channel. But if I paste something on the dark web, it's probably something bad. It's probably something harming. So I would like to understand what it is, how to monitor it. And those are all guys doing something on the dark web, I would say, against smart cities. We can drill down, we can go down to the single event, to the single happening, or we can see the span of what happens. This is actually a campaign taken over by the bad guys. It's called the Black Energy campaign. And as you can see, it spread from 2015 up to almost today. So for years, we have had this campaign going on with different malwares. Kill disk or newly generated gray energy malware. If I have those information before they hit me, there is where I can really try to anticipate and protect all the IoT environment and all the things that I have into a smart cities. Would it be energy? Would it be a washing machine? Would it be a toaster? Would it be my wireless access? If I am in the smart cities, I will have wireless access. So best way is trying to prevent. I know I rushed a little bit. Probably I went over my 7 minutes or whatever, but I can tell you, let's try to anticipate, and I'm done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. Actually, you did exceed, but because of the overall timing, we finished exactly on time. So I suggest you stay here on the panel, and whoever from our speakers, I think David there is still there to join us from today's speakers, so we can have the panel. I think some of them left. David, would you come? Does anybody from the audience have questions for the panel? You saw the speakers that are in the panel already, so you know them. Do you have questions, or I'll start asking myself? All right, maybe I'll ask. With all that you said about the threats, do you believe that smart cities and smart homes, etc., will happen? And second question is a follow-up. Would you dare to get into an autonomous car?
I start from your last question.
Yeah.
I was actually 1 year ago into an event which is called the Hacking Bootcamp. It's an event in Italy. And there were at disposal a Tesla. There was a prize for trying to break into a Tesla. And actually a group of hackers, bad guy, friends, they broke in kind of 3 minutes. So no. I want to use my will and my shift myself. not by now. Maybe later in the future.
Okay, that was
if
honest.
there will be more security. Going back to your first question, yes, some security can be applied. What we need is to work together. I mean, when you talk about just internet security or IT security, you have to deal with architects, at least software developers, but we talk almost the same language. When we think about smart cities, we have to collaborate with architects. I mean, the one who think the buildings and the constructors. We should prepare the building to be protected. So it's kind of different. It's a little more complicated. It will take a little bit of more time, but it's doable, I guess.
Same two questions.
Okay. I'm a hardware guy, so if I break into a Tesla, I just need a rock in 3 seconds, and I'm also inside. But okay, by the way, my own car is a level 2 self-driving car. I always have control over it. It's still mechanically connected, but a level 4, no way. Now, will these attacks happen? Well, we've seen indications that they are being tried. But for the moment, the hardware that's out there is not at such a scale that you can make it dangerous. But I think there were scenarios, for instance, with early smart meters, like the Italian ones, that they could be hacked, and that you could use the turn on and off switches that were in there, that they could have been used to create such a big transient that it would cause a blackout. But luckily, nobody tried it. But it was sort of in the business. It was known that it was possible. So it's just waiting for that one day that somebody takes the effort to hack a certain brand of, for instance, solar converters, and I think we will see it happening.
Yeah.
So
maybe 2 follow-up questions. We will be able to convince the people because they have to give access to their data and to trust these things. We will be able to convince them so this happens. And also this Wi-Fi thing that was mentioned, will it be more secure than Wi-Fi or something? Or is the same thing?
Sorry, could you repeat the second one?
The Wi-Fi that was explained in the GHN presentation, this is using light instead of the Wi-Fi, instead of radio waves.
Yeah.
Modulating the light of...
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, at a certain point, the light needs to be translated into data. And if someone can break there, and someone will, then you have the same risk. So probably kind of man in the middle would be probably more complicated. So the guys still have the opportunity, but maybe it's more difficult to find the capabilities for them. But consider that nowadays, all these bad guys do it for money, and they are funded. So they find our way around it. They will find it.
Okay. Yeah, David also does that.
No problem. Regarding security, well, I won't go so far as autonomous vehicles because it's not my field, but we were involved in a project for domestic control of appliances, and one of the points raised there was actually security. So we actually faced one dilemma with a company that used one specific key to encrypt all the information. It was YubiKey, that from the very beginning we were convinced that would provide a solution. So. And YubiKey actually adopted the posture of closing their own system where previously they were fully open. And being fully open was the ability to expose themselves to more attackers. So even for the scientific community to actually exploit vulnerabilities. So from the moment they closed their solution, they thought it would be more secure. That was not the case because actually someone broke the code from YubiKey, and we ourselves were demonstrating in a pilot with households and with heat pumps. And no one wants to mess with the heat pump. And they were able to mess with it because the YubiKey was actually discovered the fault they had. So one of the problems that we have from the building domain is actually to convince the stakeholders to keep their solutions open enough to be subjected to several levels of testing by every person that wants to crack the system. And there are quite some capable person to do that, even for cars. And actually contribute to securizing as much as possible the system, and to never assume that your system is fully security proof. So it's not completely safe, and actually have the mechanisms to mitigate any action that you may have from a third party trying to invade your system. That's my experience anyway.
And in the Interconnect project, are you looking at security in any way or not?
We need to. It's fundamental. That's one of the things actually that drives us in terms of security. Is actually to promote these platforms in an open way, to actually allow these different stakeholders, again, from the lessons learned in the past, that keeping it closed is not a solution. And security is also something that we don't answer it by making it close, actually just giving an opportunity for a single failure to propagate more quickly. So from the Interconnect project, that's the key point, to keep everything open as much as possible so we can expose ourselves to the testing of some others. No one better than the third party to try and exploit our vulnerabilities and to learn with that.
I find it strange that do you have an answer also? No. I find it strange that I have money in the bank and it's electronic bit somewhere, it's not paper money.
They were there.
Oh, okay. No, I just want to. So I guess you also have some amount of money, and you're trusting to have it there. I don't know. I guess it's not under the sofa or something. So, why would you trust this and not the other solutions?
I'm not trusting my home banking as well. In fact.
Ah, okay.
Actually, I can tell you a story. My wife once told me. When I have to connect to my home banking, it's more safe or secure if I connect via my mobile phone through the app or via the web browser through the computer. I told her, go to church, say a prayer, and then connect from wherever you like. That's the only answer I can give.
Okay, that sounds very encouraging. In respect to what, are you familiar what the European Commission is doing in these things, and do you have any advice for the European Commission to help you address these things?
We need to close the distance between OT security and IT security. They are still seen kind of two different things, but they are more and more inter-exchanging. Just as an example, the Wi-Fi stuff to hack the Wi-Fi hotspot that I showed you before, it can be used in several ways. And going back to, for example, connected cars, there are some companies thinking about, we can put a hotspot in the gas stations, so whenever a connected car comes in and sees the signal from the Wi-Fi and is there for pumping, we have the time to upload the new software. What if someone breaks in there? And this is just for smart cities. I have other example for SCADA environments and fog computing as well. We're not talking about smart cities, but more automation and robotics. But there is still kind of distance where probably safety is more perceived than security. And OT security is perceived like something different from cybersecurity, and it's not in the end. So there should be probably a joint framework for security if we talk back to the European community.
Yeah.
A framework common for cybersecurity, able to both protect at the same time your home banking and your connected car,
Okay.
but with the same principles.
If you look at the cars, the traditional car makers update their software once per year. Tesla, for the moment, is doing over the air every week, something. The Commission is working towards certification scheme for cybersecurity, which is quite heavy as it is planned. Not so heavy, but still it cannot be done within a week by company. So Tesla is saying, okay, then maybe let us go and we just certify the process rather than the product, each software patch that they're introducing every week. What's your vision in this? Because we have the two opinions on the market. The traditional car makers are okay with this because they have one software release per year. So.
Yes. First of all, I think that every car maker will go in the Tesla direction. I can tell you a story. The first time that there was the need of a patch, it was from Jeep. And actually, they sent out the patch on a USB stick.
Okay.
I would never trust a USB stick from an unknown, put it into my car. So they're trying to update and patch over the air, and I don't know if yearly, weekly, or whatever. In terms of security, I'm a big fan because I've seen it working very well, of threat intelligence. And this is something that every SCADA IoT player should have in place. I don't want to go as far as they should have a SOC, but they should have at least threat intelligence to be able to understand what will happen in the near future, or what the bad guys are thinking about it. To just be more, to just be able to secure maybe the hardware, maybe the Wi-Fi channels. LoRa is proven to be able to be act with man-in-the-middle attacks, stealing the keys. So it's not that it's something bad, but we should do every time something more, something different, improve security day by day. And improving security, just saying, hey, what should I think today? It's really difficult rather than saying, hey, what are the bad guys trying to do to me? I need to patch that. That can be perceived through threat intelligence.
Okay, from point of view of technology, we are dealing with, on the one hand, there's policy. Policy is being developed, and you see that there's support for instance, a new type of technology, like now the batteries. And on the other hand, you've got standardization, and that describes how well it should perform. And there's something missing, and I'll explain it with another example. Not so long ago, our policy was to decrease CO2 emission with cars. And there was standardization on how to check the efficiency of cars. And that ended with diesel cars, with fraudulent control, etc. We all know the story. Why could that happen? There was nobody foreseen that was once in a while checking if everything that was on the market, being labeled as this follows this standard or that kind of policy, nobody was really checking it. There was a lot of trust apparently. And I think we have to regain a lot of trust. So what I see is that there are regulators around and they check things whether for market compatibility, so policy compatibility, but I don't see the equivalent for compatibility with standardization in a lot of cases. It existed in the past, but for some reason nobody seems to find it necessary anymore. I think there should be, again, attention for that once in a while check, whether it's openly or anonymous with trials, whether everything is still secure, whether it should be a public body doing that, or you ask an organization to do that. I don't care, but you should try it out in practice. And we see in the cars they're going back to that with field trials and new measurement techniques for CO2 emissions. We should also do that in our line of business as well, I think.
Yeah, I think another example is the 737 MAX.
Oh yeah. Sure.
David, do you have a...
That's what the Americans do.
Well, this discussion about standardization, it's all very fine, but the way the world moves today at a really great pace, I'm not sure if it's compatible with the timeline of standardization bodies, because some standards do take some time to be thought of thoroughly, to be implemented into a single document, which is actually quite comprehensive in some cases. So, granted that we should have, let's say, a policy on protecting our assets and what can cause some harm. And actually, we don't need to go as far as Tesla. BMWs were being theft with the CAN port directly connected to the CAN. So that's one of the reasons why I had to change the pins from my car to avoid them to be stolen. But that's another case. Anyhow, I would say that this part of testing is really, really important. To have someone vouching for the security and actually this auditing of security, it's really, really important. And again, to open as much as possible this kind of scenario so anyone can test. On the other side, I would say that as much as possible, manufacturers and system integrators should minimize the impact of any kind of security breach. That's a good perspective. Try to create some barriers where the impact could be minimized. Besides that, this is a changing world with a lot of people being more and more capable, with more computational power to protect and to find some flaws. So we need to be dynamic. My main point here is, okay, be open but be dynamic. No, don't stop it. Don't assume that you're fully protected. I fully agree. Don't assume that your home banking is fully protecting you. It's not.
Okay. Maybe you say, David, again, from what you say today, there were a lot of presentations that were concerning the Interconnect project. How do you see, were you aware of all the things? How will this influence the project?
We are because we deal also with this security. It's also something critical for utilities, and we work a lot with utilities and this part of smart metering and the exposure that we get with some interfaces with meters to be connected with, let's say, home energy management systems with the local port. It's yet another point of exposure of security issues. We just need to guarantee that end-to-end that we cover all scenarios and we test a lot. Interconnect will focus a lot on security by design, but it's not security by assumption. We need to test it. We need to put it to the test to actually validate. And our hope is that by publishing this in an open space, that we can draw the attention for those willing to compete. Again, we have cascading for that. Why not include the competition for security? And someone trying to breach out our systems. This is something that we are very keen on exploiting and learn from that. It's a lot we learn from there.
Yeah, but also the other presentations. I mean, they were on SAREF, they were on smart cities, they were on GHN presentations and so on. So all these presentations.
SAREF, for instance, is something that we include from the very beginning. SAREF is, I would say, the departure point from Interconnect. It's the first, let's say, coherent ontology definition for the building, but more on the domestic side. Now we see extensions, SAREF for air, SAREF for building, and we need to bridge the gap. Joseph was mentioning this, bridge the gap, for instance, between the approach that eBus is handling and KNX, which is a large player on its own with their own solution. So this gap, in fact, we have both the associations in the project, so it will be very nice. Besides manufacturers competing against each other typically and cooperating in the project, also associations to cover this gap. So it's really important to bring them all together to discuss these issues on interoperability. Security, all in all, it's one of the centerpieces of that.
Okay, and I had something in mind when you were saying it. I'll remember, but Joseph, do you have an opinion on this? On security, etc.? Thanks.
Yeah, on security, I think it is already mentioned by David. I think it needs to be designed per se from the very beginning. But it's fair enough to say that what we are doing right now with SAREF and with the data model definition is that we are on top. We are talking about a language, and the language does not foresee where I talk to you in a closed room or in the broader audience and so forth. In that case, it's a level discussion we have. per se, definitely the communication or the transport from an information from A to B needs to be secured from the very beginning. Yeah, but it's a different level, and I would like to leave it on a different level because otherwise we mix up technologies, and that's very, very important for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Joseph, what do you think about the portal of Etsy that was described for contribution to SAREF? So that they have opened it for non-Etsy members to be able to really create the future versions of SAREF and the different extensions and so on. So.
Sorry for being late. I had a discussion with the Japanese colleagues. What we are discussing right now is how to map Econet Lite to SAREF and SAREF for ENA. So that, for me, it's a very important part to get the criteria of how to use SAREF and how to evolve SAREF and the derivatives, SAREF for ENA, SAREF for cities, and so forth. I think it's too easy to develop lots of different flavors of ontologies. And if we have already, thousands of different ontologies, it does not help us to ensure interoperability. If we want to achieve interoperability on a specific level, we need to work together, even if we have, and this is my experience too, I have discussed with so many stakeholders, harmonizing the language. It's not doable. Everybody has the feeling he has the best development, of course, yeah? But if we don't achieve it on an ontology level, describing what the meaning of a specific information is, then it doesn't help us. So in that case, for me, the portal is vital for us, yeah? Vital. It helps us very much.
Okay.
It's a basis, yeah?
Okay. David, do you have an opinion on this?
I fully agree with Joseph. I think one of the missions even in the project is actually to create, I would say, version 2.0 of SAREF that includes all of these, let's say, extensions right now that we're discussing here. Because SAREF was raised and created in a specific domain, so more on the domestic domain. Now it's growing further and further and further. I think Joseph raised a key point. We don't need more ontologies. We need to agree, all of us, to a single ontology. And try, extensions will always be there to go for different domains, but we initially thought it wouldn't be necessary to have. But we need to focus on a specific language because that helps on technology, that helps on business models, and also an important point, which is it helps the citizen to have freedom of choice. And an informed freedom of choice is really important, and not to be trapped on more gateways in between, or more systems that only translate information that from the get-go probably it wouldn't need to be translated. So that's one of the objectives of SAREF and even the interconnect. If we reduce the gateways in between the households, then we're already winning because we're contributing ourselves to reduce more and more devices that are there just to translate something that we could agree from the very beginning. So this is a really important mission for us, and I hope that by the end of the project we have, in the mid of course another version, but by the end we have one single ontology, one SAREF 3.0, 4.0, whatever it is, for everyone related with buildings.
What's your opinion on for all your open source? Because for example, you have an IoT platform that you're going to develop. I think it's maybe you're going to use the DJ or whatever of CISA and Sinov. I don't know. But it's an open source implementation. Do you believe in open source or?
There are virtues everywhere. The open source or not, whichever you are, you need to somehow create, first of all, for the ontologies, you need to have open interfaces. Because you cannot force everyone to be completely open. In fact, in the case of manufacturers, there's a trade secret there and some of the information there. But probably that's some of the information that doesn't concern the end user. But there's information there for the end of the appliance or for warranty, for maintenance purposes. It will always be there. But the use of the appliance itself as a final appliance needs to be open for other platforms. So I would say that's a matter of concern. But please.
I'm in favor.
Okay.
I'm in favor just because if you think the real bottom line of what we do is open source. Operating systems, they are derived from open source operating system. Programming languages, they all belongs from C, C Sharp or whatever, which is kind of open source. So we need to deal and cope with open source with the correct protection, maybe inserting gateways, maybe inserting some security stuff, but we need to be open, definitely. And we need to keep on working with open technologies.
Yeah, in this case, when it's open source, there are like millions of eyes that are looking into the code, into source code, etc., so they can discover vulnerabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's in his idea, and I agree. It should be open for testing. It should be open for evolving security as well. It should not be secret. Security by obscurity, we know it doesn't work at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fully in line with you, but I think we already can start with different levels. Again, the ontology per se is open. Yeah, everybody can use see and use the data, the relationships, and so forth. If I stick to that, fine. The next level is a data model. For example, Spine as one of the examples. Yeah, it's completely free. All the use cases are free of charge. You can use them. You can download them. You can analyze them, and so forth. If you have below stacks which are provided by professionals, of course, you can use it for many manufacturers. I also got the feedback that open source nobody takes care about the responsibility, about the guarantee. In that case, might be that they will fall back to companies providing the stack, but it needs to fulfill the openness of the rest of them. I can live with both. So in that case, if a manufacturer says, no, I do not want to have the no guarantee because it's open and it might be not so stable, I can also live with that. I'm in favor with open source, definitely, but I can live with both. But on the other hand, on top of that, all the information exchange, all the sequences, all the ontologies and so forth per se need to be open. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky just to say, but maybe one argument could be that if it's open source, then I don't know if the US president decides to block American technology, then our city or our grid will not stop working. This is all of a sudden. If it's open source, it can normally belong to the community. So I'm just referring to what is happening now with Huawei, with some other. So it could happen to anybody. So that's again one advantage of the open source.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have it open source, absolutely right. Yeah, but it's a decision of the manufacturer. I can accept that. In that case, I can see both. But for me, I'm totally in favor with open source. Yeah.
Plus, if you do something, let's say tailored, special, or not open source, you're going against our principle of having a common standard for communication, for working, and whatever, because, again, you need someone translating something from one language, from one hardware into a different language, into different hardware. And so we're falling back into the problem that he was seeing before. If you use open standard, you have an open standard, internationally recognized in some way.
And talking about open standards, the majority of them from the international organizations open, but sometimes they are paid for, okay, not a big amount usually, but like Sense and Elec, etc., have paid standards. Etsy, 3GPP, and so on, 1M2M, they offer them for free download. Do you think, what is your opinion on this? Is one more stopping, or because, I don't know, a city might be hesitating to pay for it? The amount is not big.
But for me, it's clear it should be free of charge. Yeah? It's the easiest way. Then I get the spreading the documents around. Everybody can use them. For us, it's absolutely necessary, even if we have brought our Spine into official Senelec standards. It's free of charge on the download page. Yeah? You need to use it. Yeah?
There is a question of a business model for standards. So there's someone profiting from, let's say, someone purchasing its standard to being compliant to that standard. So in principle, yes. In reality, I'm not sure that will happen so fast. But yes, for sure, at least as far as we can, for all of the information that relates with standards and standardized information, we ourselves will make it public because it should be, let's say, common property. There's one point raised by Joseph which is really important. It's when we are talking about open source, sometimes it's not, may not be the best way because then we need to have someone vouching for the quality of the open source. Usually it's a community that on itself, it's kind of as other technologies as we see it here as blockchain on itself. It's like some individuals being part of a blockchain saying, okay, this is trustworthy, but we need to have someone else looking at that and saying, okay, I have a stamp here, as we were mentioning a while ago, that says this open source is quality open source. Because as everything else, it's not by calling it open source that it means it's useful or even has high quality. So part of the standardization bodies in their business model is to guarantee the quality of the documentation and the standard itself. So it's a tricky discussion. It's not easy to have a clear answer, but for sure, if we go towards an openness of releasing this information to the wider public, we're doing our role in making sure that everybody has the same opportunity to receive that information, and if they are interested in, and there are some that are, to contribute to it. Sometimes they don't contribute because the participation has a huge investment. So to be part of those bodies, to be a common entity in that medium, it takes some money.
Yeah, I also do believe that what we should do is to give guidance in a standard, in a framework or whatever, to the people that are going to use this open source. I mean, Memcache in itself is not harmful. It's a great software. Mosquito, Gateway for MQTT, is a great software. But then you find tons of them, I mean really 10,000s, all over the world, freely open to the internet with no password protection even. And then I have the capability and I have the opportunity to break in. So that's the problem itself. It's not Mosquito, it's not Memcache. It's the way you use and the way you configure, the way you protect it. That's the big difference. So yes, open source is good, needs to be protected.
Yeah.
It should be really, really hard to have something unprotected. If it's hard to have something unprotected, that would be perhaps something that you could lean on, because then the standard procedure will be, okay, for me to do a big mess, it will allow me to have a great effort to do it. So sometimes you need to have something that does not allow someone to implement systems like this. Having a big lock, it's like having a door with a big lock and say, I'm safe. And then you leave the window open and say, I'm safe.
Okay. As an example, in the next framework program for the Commission, there is this Digital Europe program, which is implementation program, and there we will be deploying smart city platforms on a large scale. And for this, we need to define the criteria. And our criteria is a set of standards. It's not an open source or anything. So it's not DJ, it's not Fireware, it's not whatever. Our criteria is really standards coming from the standards organization. So it's covered by, as you said, have the security that somebody is developing and is behind these solutions to do. In general, I don't know how familiar you are with the next framework program of the Commission. There is already the Horizon Europe, of course, for RNI. There is a digital program for implementation. There is Connected Europe Facility for cross-border pan-European project, and so on and so on. If you are familiar, because, okay, the topics that will be inside, they're more or less fixed. They were for public consultation, etc., etc. Now we are to write the work program. Do you have any advice in this respect, or for your respective areas or of knowledge and expertise?
Well, I cannot say that I'm too knowledgeable about the next programs. What I can say is that from the very beginning, I've been involved in the, let's say, Europe-related projects from FP6. So actually, we have come a long way. So we have considered a lot of new themes that back then were not even a topic of discussion. So security was something, okay, it's there, it should be implemented. It's fine. And nowadays it's something that it's becoming actually a real concern. So I think that the issues being raised by the Commission are in a good way, in the sense that it involves several stakeholders and brings up this discussion to multiple domains. Because nowadays we're talking about multiple domains, and that's the key point. what I can say is I really hope that this endeavor of openness and with the support of the Commission to have everybody participating there, it's something to come to stay. You know, something that will be here for the next years. Something as okay, we assume it is this way.
Okay. Well, that's fine. Something else that you would like to say? I mean, we are approaching the end. It's like 10 minutes left. If you want that we discuss something. So I guess.
For me, it's okay.
Okay. So then maybe we can close because it's amazing. But thanks. Thanks everybody for still staying with us. And I think what we heard today was the different sectors where we need interoperability beyond the energy and how the energy fit into this whole picture. Then we saw the different layers of interoperability, which was starting from the very physical layer with GHN, and then we're going into the IoT layer, and then into the semantics layer, and so on and so on. Then, of course, all the aspects of security, etc., etc. So I think this painted, as much as possible within an afternoon, a full picture of what kind of a connected spaces, a smart ecosystem would look like in the future. And this is just a kind of a snapshot for the moment. Of course, all this will need a lot of evolution in the future because this is ICT, so it doesn't stay still. Every year there is a new release, there is a new situation coming. But I think we are on the right way, and from the discussion of the panel, I also have the feeling that we are on the right way. And so I thank again everybody, the speakers, the participants, and yeah, we continue working. I hope to see you next year or at other events. Thanks.
Thank you very much.